According to China's EU ambassador Fu Cong, Israel-Hamas war revealed Western double standards and how Beijing considers West's disconnect with rest of world. Shortly after outbreak of hostilities Israel and Gaza on October 7, Fu spoke in Brussels mid-November, saying the bloc tracked China on global stage. He opposed his labeling and said that having different foreign policy views made Beijing a competitor. If it were to rival, Brussels would see that it had many other competitors. From the Middle East to Africa, from Asia to Latin America, there are clearly many countries that disagree with Europe on values. We can say this clearly from difference in reactions to ongoing Gaza crisis in Middle East. These comments are from China, India, Brazil, South Africa, Pakistan, where nations are looking for alternatives. He came to clarify his long-term efforts to gain influence in the so-called Global South, which includes countries like Indonesia and Nigeria, Western-led world order, bloody S in Ukraine, most recently in Gaza. It has exposed global divisions over plight Palestinians, and has raised the ongoing perception of Western hypocrisy over use force civilian casualties. Beijing is trying to derive from this situation. Haiyun Ma said, "This is a great victory for China to show hypocritical and ideological nature of US's foreign policy towards Palestine in Global South. This indirectly affects war of Global South in Ukraine." A Chinese foreign policy expert from Frostburg State University in Maryland told RFERL. In October, U.S. President Joe Biden called on America's support for Ukraine and Israel. Many in the developing world have heard of a double standard. China and many other countries see it as hypocritical for West to condemn the illegal Russian occupation of Ukraine, but to stand behind Israel, which for decades has occupied a part of Palestinian territory and has settlements in West Bank. The White House has recently become more critical of Israel's military action in Gaza. But leaders of many countries in Global South, which historically supported Palestinian cause, have pointed to West's different response to both crises. These perceived gaps in Western policy, which have recently been exacerbated by scenes of civilian casualties in Israel's attack on Gaza Strip, experts say, offer China the opportunity better position itself as an alternative to Washington's global leadership and may seek undermine United States. An attempt to gather global support to isolate and punish Russia for occupying its neighbor. Since the deadly attack on Israel on October 7, China has presented itself as a means of peace while targeting the West. Chinese diplomats in the UN and Chinese state news outlets that broadcast in local languages globally have raised criticism, saying U.S. military support for Israel has contributed to the war. Beijing, meanwhile, sought to boost its influence by calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and hosting a peace conference.